Right, we're back in the garage on my one-man mission to create a wheel bearing puller for the back of a VW Beetle. Now, I'm wanting to create a puller which means I can pull the bearing out on its own without removing the axle tubes. I've not found many solutions online. No one seems to be sharing any information on how to create something like that. To get the proper official tool, the long-fingered puller. Well, I've never even seen one, let alone likely to own one, so I imagine they're mega money. So we're going to create one. Now I've gone through quite a few failures, so this will probably be about the fourth attempt. So before I created the puller which attaches to the axle tube, I actually had to go at creating one using coach bolts. So I basically reshaped the end of the coach bolt and made it into little hooks like that. And in theory, it seemed to work quite well, so it's similar to the principle of what's on here now. So it hooks into the bearing. When you straighten it, it locks, and they don't pull out. Certainly not. They don't pull out by hand. Oop. It wasn't in properly. So I created that, and I used two hooks, and put it through a bar. But basically, the bolt I used to tighten up just twisted and crushed.
Oh no.
I then tried using three hooks, and I used the hooks themselves, tightening them up individually rather than use a central bolt, and then the hooks failed. So there's a lot of force involved in pulling this bearing off. Obviously trying to get it to come out square is quite important too. I then went online, thought somebody must have got a solution. So I hit Google again, and I found a picture of an old picture. It's from a magazine or something, I'm not sure what it is, where you modify a bolt as a puller. I couldn't figure that one out. Didn't seem to work at all. So just using, again, standard steel threaded bar. It's just too soft and it pulls straight out. It's actually, this pulled out faster than the hooks on the coach bolts. So I went on the hunt for high tensile bolts. What I was going to use for that was effectively a long version of a CV joint bolt. So they're the tensile bolts, so they should be a lot stronger. And I was looking for long ones. However, the only supplier I could find in Sheffield that could get me in for, well, not a sensible money, they basically had to buy a full box, and a full box was 100 quid. So I might as well start looking for pullers if I'm going to be doing that. So we're going to modify the design slightly. We're going to use, again, we're going to give it a try using these, which are an M8 CV joint bolt, standard Volkswagen kit. Hopefully they'll be strong enough. Rather than using 3 or 2 or less, I'm going to use 7. So we're not messing around this time. We're going to have 7 hooks all the way around. We're going to have to build a plate because they're a lot shorter, so we'll have to modify the design slightly. But I'm hoping with 7 of these and a decent chunky 12 or even 14mm bolt in the centre to pull them with. Fourth time lucky. So what we're going to do is we're basically going to create little hooks like that, and I'll show you how I've done it from that. I know this isn't super technical, so I apologise in advance, but I just want to try and demonstrate how I've shaped it. If you look inside the CV joint, you'll see that there's the ball bearings, and then you have the plastic cage, and there's like a V shape in between. So what we've got to do is we've got to create a hook which will go inside that shape. So we have to shape it to a specific V shape, I guess. So if you're looking from the end of the bolt, what we're going to do is we've got to get the end of the bolt there, or the end of the cap screw. But effectively we're going to cut down the sides like that, which gives us the kind of the V shape. And then this part here, so if you get the side view there, we're going to cut the corner off, which is the bottom part here. So from above you'll only end up with that part left. And from the side, so the bottom part will be removed completely, bottom half of the cap screw. And then we're going to cut across the corner, and that allows you to turn the cap screw into the actual bearing. I found if you don't shape the bolt to go in that little recess, what happens is it tries to push the bearing cage out the back of the wheel bearing, so it doesn't really work. I'm going to take about 4mm off the end of here. And that basically takes it back to more or less the bottom of the cup. Next we're going to vaguely cut that shape from the top. So we'll be taking the sides off, leaving us with like a foot shape at the bottom. Now we're going to chop the hammer or the T-shape to make it into the hook. So we want to keep the fat end. So you can see the fat end there. We're going to keep that as the hook, and we're going to chop off the back edge of this one. So it vaguely goes from the back corner where it touches the stem. That angle there. If you can see that. Now, I did find this was a bit of a trial and error. So I actually got the bearing. I chopped a little bit off, tried it. I want it to be you want it to be a real tight fit in there, so you can straighten it, the bolt straight, so that you can attach it to the puller. But at the same time, you want it to fit tight in there, and also without pushing the bearing cage out. So, so it does take a bit of trial and error, and it took about 2 or 3 fits before that one fitted perfectly. I know they look a little bit fiddly to make, but by the last one, it only took me 3 minutes. So once you get going and you get a feel for the shape, it's quite quick. Next, we've got to create the puller plate. So on the wheel bearing, I've marked 7 points where the hooks are going to locate on there. I've then drawn around that on a piece of 5 to 6 mil steel and transferred those 7 locations, which happen to be about 11 mil from the edge, on here. Now we're going to drill 8 mil holes or thereabouts, so we can put the hooks through, and we'll be bolting them through those holes. But before we can do that, we have to cut a big hole in the middle. Now, because we're using the shorter bolts, it means that this plate now has to go over the top of the axle. So I'm going to go and measure the axle now. We're going to cut that out the centre so it slips over the top of the axle, and then we'll drill our 7, 8 mil holes around the outside edge. I didn't have a 30 mil hole saw, so we're going to have to do it the old-fashioned way. Got some serious filing to do. I'm just going to open those holes up a little bit just to make it a little bit easier. Right, we're going to make the puller next. So I've got a large stud, it's 15 mil. So when I did it previously with a 10, it just crushed, so not taking any chances. I've cut a simple circular plate out, and basically we'll be bridging from there to there, and we'll weld a couple of bars on one each side. Hopefully I can leave some access to put nuts on underneath. In hindsight, it might be better to leave these kind of squarer, but live and learn. So we're going to link these two together. I'm going to weld a nut onto this plate because that's going to be pulling as I turn it, and then we're going to chop this off and weld the nut to that, and that'll be the bar that we thread, basically you screw in. Okay, we're pretty much done. So it's all welded up now. I'm not going to paint it until I know it actually works. But yeah, I think I've just constructed it to make sure everything fits together well, which it seems to. It is very, very fiddly, as I mentioned earlier, getting the 7 hooks into the 7 holes. And imagine when it's on the car and it's horizontal, it'll be even trickier. So to get around that, I came up with a very simple solution. So if you put the hooks on, and basically put a tie wrap around them, it holds them in place, and then it allows you to slot the top part of the puller on quite easily. In hindsight, a better design option might be to just slot the bottom disc here, so you can hook them in and then just kind of slot them on rather than having to feed them through a hole. But I'm going to leave this one for as it is for now, just to see if it actually works, to see if the hooks pull the bearing out, I guess, and then we'll maybe modify it after that. I'll just give this a bit of a grease so it hopefully spins nice and freely. Fingers crossed it's not going to jam up. Let's give it a whirl. One, 2, 3. Keep my fingers crossed. Oh yeah, come on.